We have a very special guest in Joel Penfield of One Royal Way joining us today. What does he think the Royals should do this offseason? We'll dive into it in this edition of Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back here with a Tuesday edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I am your host, Jack Johnson. We are joined by one of our favorite guests to have on this podcast, and Joel Penfield of One Royal Way does fantastic work over at KCSN, and I cannot wait to get his thoughts on the Royals offseason, what they should do, because I can only talk into a mic by myself for so long. Eventually, I'm going to need somebody to bounce some ideas off of. I know Joel does the exact same thing. So we have a loaded show for you tonight. Very excited about it. But a few quick reminders here before we dive into it. Since we do have Thanksgiving this week, we'll still have the 5 episodes, but we'll probably be pre-recording a few episodes. Any mailbag questions you want me to get to, have them in before Wednesday. That way we can have those answered in one of our episodes later this week. And one reminder that today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So download the FanDuel app today. Well, first things first, Joel, I know I'm catching you at a good time. Wanted to get you in before the holiday just because we got so much to talk about. But first and foremost, how are we doing on this fine Tuesday?
I'm good, man. I haven't talked Royals on any show at all in over a month. Basically been dark since, the middle of the postseason. Hopefully I'll get a show up around the winter meetings time, I'd imagine. Letting the Chiefs stuff kind of take the reins as it should over it at my place of business. But I'm glad to do this. It's been a while since you and I have gotten to chop it up in any form. Been a long time since like the 8-10 days when you had the night shift. I think it's been that long. So glad to do this, and thanks for having me on.
Of course, man. I know that you've definitely got thoughts on what this offseason may look like. It's going to be a busy one. That's the one thing I can tell every person listening. I expect it to be busy. I do expect there to be some trade that is more than just Jonathan India for Brady Singer. I see them making a move this offseason that will really move the needle. You'll see Jeff Passan tweet it out. It'll break the internet for a little bit. And really the question is, who is it going to be, and what are the Royals going to be giving up? So, Joel, we have tossed around so many ideas over the last 2 weeks or so. Who is your number one target? And if you could go a little bit deeper into, if that is your number one target, who should the Royals be looking to give up?
So, I think you need to be looking for an outfielder somewhere. That has to be the move that you make. Or whether it is an everyday center fielder. And Kyle Isbell is a good player. This is not me trying to disparage him, but getting a more impact player in center field, I think, would make a major difference. Or at a minimum, get a corner outfield bat that can mash a little bit, add a little more depth to the lineup, and not just be a horrific net negative that the outfield essentially was for the entirety of last season. So that's where you get your Jarren Duran, which is going to be a little bit more expensive just because of the type of player that he is. Or a Wilyer Abreu, who, again, corner outfielder, same amount of controllable years, but a little bit lower ceiling, so it may be a little bit cheaper if the Red Sox do want to make that type of move with the logjam in the outfield that they have. And it's somewhat, it's a good thing for them because they have Roman Anthony, they have Ceddanne Rafaela, who's one of the best defensive players in the outfield. And then you have Abreu and Duran. So you got 4 players for 3 spots, and you're not going to bench one of them, and you're not going to make one of them a DH. So you may be able to go and do something there. The cost is going to hit like a freight train compared to the types of trades Kansas City has made in recent years. It's going to cost you a top-level prospect, maybe some big league ready pitching, but that's the cost of doing business when you need to make an impact move to help your big league roster now. I think that is the thing that Royals fans are going to have to come to grips with. That no matter who they go and get, and Duran, Abreu were just an example, and I know that that's a common one, but it's the type of move that you need to make to get over the hump. You have to maximize this window with Bobby Witt Jr. and with this core if you really want Bobby to not opt out in a couple of years. Like, that's the type of timeline we're on now. Last year, I was in favor of them making a move on the margins like they did with Jonathan India. Make the big league club a little bit better, raise the floor a little bit, and hope he can make a move. It wasn't enough. This is where now JJ has to get aggressive. And this is in this offseason, because you can't miss the playoffs for a second consecutive year after kind of arriving early. You can't take another step backwards.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement with you there. It's got to be an offseason where you look at the glaring holes on this team and say, we got to do everything we can to fix it. Because the last two off seasons, they got the pieces they wanted, but still that elusive middle of the order bat has not been there, right? They went after Anthony Santander last offseason. They went after Jurickson Profar. The previous offseason, they landed with Hunter Renfroe, but the focus that offseason was more so about pitching. So it feels that this offseason has to be the big fish. It has to be the guy that you put your chips in on. And I don't know about you, Joel, but it feels like all arrows now are pointing to Boston. Boston seems the most motivated to trade an outfielder. They need big league pitching. The Royals matchup on paper, it more so comes down to who is willing to budge first, right? The Red Sox are having a high asking price for Jarren Duran. The Royals aren't willing to meet that. But Joel, eventually that price is going to come down because they probably need to move him. They've got 5 outfielders out there. They're not going to have Jarren Duran be their 4th outfielder. They need starting pitching. The Royals have that. So is it a, Noah Cameron, Chris Bubich, and that's about it if you're JJ Piccolo? Or is it pretty much I'm trading any starter that's not Cole Reagans and maybe we just cut off the list right there?
Yeah, I think this is a scenario where, again, it's going to hurt, but this is the type of offseason where basically everyone that is a prospect is on the table, right? Like Blake Mitchell included, Ben Kudrna included, the guys that you just drafted, Josh Hammond, Sean Gamble. Though if they think that highly of them, then okay, that's what we need to do to get it done. It's why you build a farm system and why it's so important to do so as a small market team. You don't have the hundreds of millions of dollars to throw around for some of these 6-figure deals. Like some of these teams can just go out and do. It's part of the kind of the disparity in Major League Baseball. So having a good farm system allows you to counteract that by going, okay, yeah, we may not be able to go and pay for this guy, but we can use these prospects and package them together and go and get that player that can be a high impact player. And that's what the Royals are going to have to do. It's what, they've been trying to build over the last couple of years. I know that it's not the highest quality farm system, but I think there are enough talented players with some ceiling that I think you could get teams to dream on a little bit and make that move. That's what they're going to have to do. To me, there's very few guys that I wouldn't trade. Like, obviously, Jack, Carter, I'm not moving off of Cole. Like, Noah Cameron would be tough, but if a team wants controllable pitching, then, hey, cost of doing business. So you still have Ryan Bergert, Stephen Kolek, and you have other guys that are going to elevate, that can, take up some of those innings. This is where the Chris Bubich conversation to me is the most fascinating because he's got 1 year left. So technically he does have control, but it's a rental for 1 year. And if you're Kansas City, would it be better for you to just trade him now, injury concerns and all, and just get something for him rather than have him pitch out this year? And then you're likely not going to re-sign him after the season to begin with, unless they have some sort of talks to get an extension together before this season starts. I think that might be the most prudent move for them to make and get something for him before he hits the market. And maybe you get a comp pick, but who knows what his free agent deal is going to look like with his injury history.
Yeah, I think in a perfect world, the Royals would love to acquire a Jarren Duran or Willie Abreu and have to give up Chris Bubich and a prospect just because it lines up with their timeline. Chris Bubich is going to be a free agent. He's also had the injury concerns, but on the flip side, that's what Boston is telling you. Why are we going to give up Jarren Duran or Abreu when we're bringing in a guy who's going to be a free agent and we don't even know if we can get 150 innings out of the guy? I mean, he got 120, I believe, last season. So that would give some teams some pause. But what I would say with this for those listeners out there that say, well, I'm not willing to move Noah Cameron. I hear you there, but my rebuttal is this. If the Royals kept their entire rotation intact, they kept, all of the 5 we've talked about, Reagans, Lugo, Waka, Bubich, Cameron, kept Ryan Bergert and Stephen Kolek as the 6th and 7th guy. To me, if they don't acquire that bat, Joel, they're not making the postseason. The offense is not 100%. Good enough. Yeah, they don't have the depth for it. So my rebuttal to that is, now, can you make the postseason if you trade a Noah Cameron and Blake Mitchell for a Jaron Duran and a Ryan Burgert or Stephen Kolek replaces Cameron? To me, that's a better shot for this team than them just saying, well, we don't want to trade pitching. Let's go with Rob Refsnyder and Mike Yastrzemski in left field and run it with Isbell and Jack Caglione in right. I mean, I feel if you got that bat, I'm willing to give up the pitching because that gets you closer to October.
It's the way again, cost of doing business. And it's hard because as fans of a small market team and people that cover a small market team kind of cling to these young guys that have come up and are cost control. And hey, we got this dude for 6 years and he's going to help our team for the next half decade. And he's, it's important for a team like Kansas City to hold on to those guys. It's also important when you're in a contention window to trade those guys if it means making your big league roster better in the immediate. It's sometimes in the future, depending on where you're at. But in the case of the Royals right now, it's in the immediate because I do believe this team can contend for the AL Central and can contend to make a playoff run. But in order to do that, the offense has to be better, just flat out. And you need better years from Bobby Witt Jr., which is crazy to think about considering he finished, fourth in MVP voting, and we considered it a quote-unquote down year. But Salvador Perez is 36. Who knows when Father Time actually catches up with him? Is Vinny Pasquantino going to be 30 and 100 next year? We'll see. I hope so. Can Michael Garcia replicate what he did last year? Can Jack Caglione level up? Can Carter Jensen level up? There are just a lot of question marks with this team of what you're going to get from certain guys. And when you have that many question marks, even among talented players, you need to continue to supplement the offense around them and make it more well-rounded. And I do think some sort of platoon of a Yaz and a Rob Refsnyder or who was the guy from the Reds? Austin Hayes. Something like that. Like, okay, sure, it might work, but it may raise your floor a little, but they tried making the floor raising move last year and it failed almost spectacularly. So you need to go and try and make the ceiling move, take a big swing, be aggressive. JJ's not afraid to do that, I don't think. And so this will be a big test for him as a general manager of, okay, how big of a swing am I willing to make right now? And I think they know how important it is for 2026 to make the playoffs or at least be a viable contending team. And it may seem risky. You run the risk of Blake Mitchell being awesome or Chris Bubich being a legitimate Cy Young guy over, for the year, or Noah Cameron is just he's a gutsy 180 inning a year guy. And there's a ton of value in that, but you got to be good for 2026. It's awesome to think about 2028 and beyond. Can't do that right now if you're Kansas City.
Yeah, fascinated to know, what the ceiling is for many of these guys that we've been discussing. But let's take a quick break here. When we come back, I want to get Joel's thoughts on what the perfect offseason would look like for the Royals. That's coming up on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. You can find me on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. And we are joined by Joel Penfield of the One Royal Way podcast. They do fantastic work over there at KCSN. You can follow Joel at JT Penfield on Twitter. Get all of his analysis on the Kansas City Royals. Before we go any further, I want to tell you about the title sponsor today in FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. For my pick, I'm going to go back to the NFL on Thanksgiving. You got the Ravens and the Bengals. I will take the over in this game. The Bengals have a poor defense, but Joe Burrow is also expected to start in that one. But I'll also go with the Ravens' money line. They've been red hot of late, and I see them getting by the Bengals, even though Joe Burrow is back at quarterback. So, Joe, let's dive into a variety of moves here. The perfect offseason for the Royals. We know up top it's going to be a trade. So I want to put your feet to the fire a little bit here. If you are JJ Picollo, What moves are you making? I know mostly it's going to be on the offensive side here, but it can be as little as one move. It can be 5 moves. It can be 10 moves. I just want to get your thoughts on what the A-plus offseason would look like for Kansas City.
Man, I mean, there's a lot here because I don't think this team is really that far off. But when you really dive in, it's like, man, there are some places where they can really find a way to get better. To me, and it may not be the first on the board. It's just the first thing that came to mind is getting another left-handed reliever. I think Angel Serpa is way better than people give him credit for generally. I'm not acting like he's some incredible talent that people are underrating, but he's a solid big league left-handed reliever when they ask him to not handle all the high leverage innings from the left side. And that's fine. But Sam Long clearly was a gas can most of last season. He got relegated to mop-up duty. So that's gone. The high leverage stuff in 24 was much more of an aberration than anything. And then Daniel Lynch is just, to me, gas. It's a pipe bomb waiting to explode. Like the expected numbers were really poor. He walked a bunch of guys, gave up a bunch of hard contact, and he didn't strike out enough guys to make it look like, okay, well, he can at least get some swing and miss. There's not a lot of that there. The FIP was like I don't have it, but I'm pretty sure it was like a 1.5 higher than his ERA. It was and all the expected numbers back that up as well. So to me, you cannot rely on him. And when I did a roster projection for the end of the as the offseason was getting rolling, I had him on the bubble. Like, I don't think you can trust him in a big league bullpen next year. So this is where you go and get, and it's tricky because a lot of the left-handed relievers that are out there are either probably too expensive for Kansas City's blood or you had a lot of volatility. Gregory Soto throws it hard and has a lot of strikeouts, but there's some volatility there. Maybe you take a swing on it because of the ability to throw it hard, swing and miss. If they wanted to go a little more expensive, Taylor Rogers, it's kind of a funky angle from the left side. He's been around. He's been very solid for quite a long time. I think you could probably get him on a fairly cheap deal, 1 or 2 years, and pair him kind of in those middle innings. So I would go something along that line. I didn't necessarily have like a name that I loved, but as long as they go and get a established left-handed reliever to pair with Zerpa in those, because we know how much Q loves using his, the platoon stuff and all that. And to pair maybe at the back end can handle some high leverage to take some pressure off of Lucas Erceg and Carlos Estevez late in games. That would be the way I do it. I would try and make a trade for an outfielder if I could. If not, then I would fall back to a potential platoon in left field with a Mike Yastrzemski, Rob Refsnyder, Mike Tauchman, Rob Refsnyder, Austin Hayes is another name you could throw in there as a right-handed hitter in the outfield. And then at that point, a lot of it is hoping that Jack Caglione levels up and that Jonathan India is not a net negative. I do, and I know we were going to talk a little bit about the non-tender stuff here in a bit, but this kind of ties in. Do you just take a swing on Adolis Garcia and hope you get a bounce back?
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought too. The issue that I ran into is his splits last year against lefties was actually worse than what he was against righties.
Yeah, he's a reverse split. That was what turned me off initially because I was like, okay, you need to go and if nothing, at a minimum, it's the weak side platoon for Jack in right field. But here's the thing. The outfield was so awful last year. His 85 weighted runs created plus is a net positive for the outfield, considering what it was the entirety of last season. And he's a really, really good defender in the corner outfield. And he can run a little bit, and he's still got some power. And this lineup can handle his amount of swing and miss because there's a lack of it in most other places in the lineup. So I would go initially. I was like, I don't think I would do it, but if the price is right, I would and add him in. And maybe you put him in left field. And I know he's predominantly been in right, but I think he could probably handle left. He's a good enough defender out there. I think he could handle it. And then you have an outfield of Adolis, Izzy, and Jack, and make it work from there. You got 2+ defenders out there as Jack still tries to figure things out, and just as long as he's not awful and right, then it should be fine.
Yeah, I mean, I expect him to be much better in right field than he was last year. You saw the flashes for Jack, but I mean, he had to learn right field on the fly. We saw the same thing with MJ when he was catching, and they said, go learn right field. Oh, actually, go learn left field. And you make that switch for a young player in general. It's
tricky.
It's tough to learn right field and then learn the slices of that off a right-handed bat. and then switch it over to left field where it's completely opposite. What I like about Adolis Garcia, which the Royals haven't had off the bench the last couple of years, you get an elite defender as your fourth outfielder. If you did get your Jarren Duran, Brendan Donovan, Wilyer Abreu, whatever, you get an Adolis Garcia who not only is an elite defender at bare minimum, like that's the worst case scenario. He can't hit. He hits sub 200, but he's an elite defender that you can trust to replace Caglione late in the game. And also, he's still going to have power. That's what's not going to go away. He has immense power from the right side, and that's why it's been intriguing to me. But what I wonder with Adolis Garcia, now that he's been non-tendered, is he going into this free agent pool saying, there's been a couple of guys that have accepted qualifying offers. I know I'm probably getting a one-year deal, but I'm not settling for a $5 million deal. I want $12 million. I want $13 million. And if you're the Royals, are you paying $13 million to a platoon guy that's not even good against left-handed pitching,
No, that's the tricky thing. And another thing that I thought of, because I don't know what they're going to do with Jonathan India next year. I know he's back and they tendered him a contract. I had kind of floated that, not like it was sourced or anything, but just I wonder if he does get non-tendered because it went so poorly. Offensively, it wasn't good. He walked at the lowest rate of his career. He stopped stealing bases. And he was a horrific defender at three different positions. Like it did not work. I think part of them bringing him back was just trying to justify the move and not just punt on it immediately. But if they maybe just want to make him a bench guy at $7 million, you could, or $8 million, you could do that. And it's not maybe an insult to him, but it's not like we were paying him to be an everyday player. An $8 million contract isn't always that in today's game. And if you still believe in Michael Massey, maybe you try and find a right-handed hitting second baseman to platoon with him, because Massey is fine. If they want to run him out there to begin this season, I'm willing to give it one more shot. But I do think they need to have a platoon for him because of the back stuff, because of the nagging injuries that seem to just kind of plague his entire career, gets him off his feet a little bit. I don't know who you necessarily go to get that guy. Gleyber Torres was a name that kind of I was intrigued by, but he took the qualifying offer in Detroit, which I was incredibly surprised by. There were multiple guys that took qualifying offers that I didn't expect. But maybe, it wouldn't be sexy, but like an Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, something like that. A guy that can play a bunch of different positions, but can be a second baseman there. Maybe you swing for the fences a little bit and go, you know what, F it. Let's go get Jorge Polanco. Like something like that. It's throwing a bunch of names out, and I know I'm not doing anything definitive, but I have no idea what Kansas City's going to do, man. Like, I have absolutely no idea. The organization is so tight-lipped in a lot of these situations. Like, there was no inkling that they were going to go and sign Bobby Wood Jr. to that extension. Like, there was no inkling they're going to make some of these free agent moves. That it's like, they're either going to do just enough to try and make this team, improve it on the margins, make it viable, or they're going to go out and swing for the fences a little bit, so to speak. And I have, frankly, no idea which door they're going to open and go for.
Yeah, that's the fun part about it, though, this offseason. I can't wait for the tweet that comes out where a trade's happen or a signing's happen. Alex Lang, there was no word of that whatsoever. You could see the fit, but came out of nowhere.
I like the move. He's fine.
I do too. It's a fine move that gives you some depth there. They've made a couple of depth moves, but what I want to do for our final segment here, we'll take a quick break. Let's go over the news that is truthful, that we don't have to speculate on. The non-news that happened, couple of the signings that we had. We want to get the thoughts from Joel on Bailey Falter, Jonathan India, Taylor Clark, MJ Melendez, and we'll probably dive in a little bit to that Alex Lang signing that happened last week. We'll take a quick break. You're listening to Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. Welcome back into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, joined alongside Joel Penfield of the One Royal Way podcast over at KCSN. Go give him a listen. Fantastic work that he does. You ever want some other insight? We try to bring Joel on every once in a while so we can get another person's perspective here. Like I said to begin the show, it gets boring talking into the same mic over and over again to nobody, talking into this screen.
I relate to that.
Yeah, Joel can relate to that as well. So he does the same thing that I do. So we always want to get together and go back and forth when we have some news to go over here, which this offseason, not super chaotic just yet. There's been a couple of big trades. Brandon Nimmo got dealt to the Rangers for Marcus Semien, kind of contract dump for contract dump. The Royals haven't made their big move just yet. What we can go over to close out the show, Joel, was the non-tender deals. We know that Jonathan India got tendered a contract, 1 year, $8 million. They non-tendered MJ Melendez and Taylor Clark. There was no word on Bailey Falter, which leads me to believe they tendered his contract. He was just not one of the non-tender guys. He has to make the club out of spring training or he will be DFA'd. And then we also got the word last week that they signed Alex Lang. And that's when you and I went back and forth of, well, whose spot is he taking in the bullpen? Kind of clear now, where I thought it was Jonathan Bowen. Clear now that it's Taylor Clark, whose spot that he is supposedly going to take. I'm excited for it because I feel that they clearly have this belief that he can bounce back if he's healthy. That will be the big question mark. He hasn't really been healthy in 2 years, but I want to go over Alex Lang here. He got a local guy, went to high school in Lee Summit, was a pretty good back-end reliever for the Tigers, and then just battled injuries the last 2 years. Tremendous curveball. When he was healthy, that thing was running up 87, 88 miles an hour. Had some of that sinking fastball run as well, 97 to 98. Is this a guy that when you see a signing like this from the Royals, you go, I'm almost expecting him to succeed because that's just the new era under Brian Sweeney. And they also brought in an assistant pitching coach I want to get your thoughts on before we close out the show to replace Zach Bowe. But let's start with Alex Lang here. Do you see that there's maybe a above 50% chance that he's a good back-end reliever for the Royals this year?
We'll see. When you have a guy with the type of injury history that he has, there's obviously a ton of questions. But I do implicitly just trust Brian Sweeney to maximize what a guy can be. And this new guy that they brought in, McFerrin, we'll see what he's able to bring as well, and collaborate with Sweeney on some things. He's got a good history working with pitchers, and he worked in the pitching lab at Wake Forest. So, he can help guys in like pitch design and things like that. So I'm sure they're going to find a way to do something along that line. But I don't have super high expectations for it, at least at present. I imagine he's going to throw in the John Schreiber innings. It would be at least initially, and maybe if he's able to regain some of the form that he had, a couple of seasons ago in Detroit, then it takes some pressure off of Lucas Ursay, Carlos Estevez. It's a third righty you can throw in some of those high leverage spots, but we'll see what's available. And it's a 1-year deal. It's a super cheap. I don't even think it's $1 million deal. Maybe even a little bit less than that. So if it blows up, they can cut bait with it super quick. It could be as early as spring training. Like if he's not healthy or it's not going well, then it's super easy for them to move off of it. But I think they signed him and gave him a major league contract with the intention he's going to be on the opening day roster. And if it hits, it's another example of the Royals pitching development being one of the best in Major League Baseball, when a couple of years ago, we were talking about it being one of the worst. It's been a super quick turnaround. And when I saw this signing, if it was in like 2022, I would have been like, oh boy, I don't know, man. We'll see, maybe. And now I'm like, cool, let's see what Brian Sweeney can do. Like, it's kind of like a whiplash almost, where you see some of these kind of flyer deals. And now I'm excited. I think it could end up being really good if it pans out.
Yeah, it's nothing but upside there. He actually has an option as well. So if he bombs in spring training, you can just stash him away in Omaha for some depth there. As for the non-tender guys, so MJ Melendez, Joel, we know we don't need to spend too much time on that. There was no chance he was making the roster to begin with. He's had multiple opportunities the last 2 years. I'm hoping nothing but the best for him. He's an incredibly nice guy to talk to. Had always rooted for him, thought there was going to be some opportunity in 2025, change the stance a little bit. It was just not meant to be. Sometimes guys like that need a fresh start. I do want to get your thoughts on Taylor Clark. Is this more so of learning from maybe Sam Long of, hey, it was a minor league deal guy we got a good year from, did not perform well the next year. And Taylor Clark, look, he was good, very phenomenal and not walking anybody and not dealing with many base runners. But we don't need to act like he was the 7th inning guy or the 8th inning guy. It felt like they non-tendered him and said, we just don't envision him having another great year in this bullpen. We can upgrade in that spot. Because to me, non-tendering Taylor Clark over Bailey Falter is a bit of a choice. But is it more so of Taylor Clark was a minor league deal? We did actually give up some resources to get Bailey Falter. Therefore, we want to give him one more shot in spring training.
That's kind of my view of it. I was pretty surprised that Taylor Clark did get non-tender. I thought at least they'd bring him back for spring training and see if there's a little more in the tank. But I do think your Sam Long point might be the reasoning here, because it was a non-roster invite, minor league deal. oh, hey, this guy's pretty good in our bullpen. Let's keep it rolling. And then Sam Long was just awful. And it was not a main reason, but it was a reason why the team tanked in April, because Sam Long couldn't get anybody out and they were still relying on him like it was 2024. So I do think there's an element of that, but I do think Taylor Clark's going to latch on somewhere else. There's still more there. It's not like the expected numbers are terrible, but he doesn't get a lot of chase, doesn't get a lot of swing and miss, and doesn't strike a lot of guys out. Modern baseball, modern relievers, there's just not a lot there. That's not as palatable of a profile as maybe 15, 20 years ago, where I bet Taylor Clark is probably still in the Royals bullpen. I was surprised. I thought Bolin was going to be the odd man out here when they signed Lang, or at least he would be on the bubble, right? Or it's, that's in the conversation. But I think once they non-tendered him and signed Lang, I was like, oh, that makes sense. Okay. We totally understand what's going on here. Well, actually, it happened in reverse order. They signed Lang and then non-tendered Clark.
Yeah.
So there it is. From the MJ perspective, yeah, it was as inevitable of a move as we were going to find. And we all knew that was happening in mid-April when they optioned him. Like, oh, it's done. Like the experiment is over. And initially, I thought it was going to be a quick, maybe 2 or 3 week get right, figure it out mentally, and then come back. And then he just stayed in Omaha, and he struggled in Omaha. And then he got another quick cup of coffee, and it wasn't good either. It's, all right, hey, it's done. Like he's just not going to be a Royal anymore. And it wasn't for lack of trying. Everything I ever heard about him is that he's one of the hardest working dudes there. He switched positions for the betterment of the club and just couldn't figure it out. And tried a bunch of different stuff. Because sometimes when you see these young guys flame out fast, it's from either a lack of attention to detail, a lack of effort on their part, like, hey, what got me here is what's going to get me through this, or a lack of coachability. And none of those three things, I think, were a factor for MJ. It just wasn't good enough. Maybe a change of scenery, maybe going back home. Maybe if he latched on with one of the Florida teams, gets a non-roster invite to spring training, and wishing him for the best, because he was a good guy. But, being a good guy only gets you so far. It's a results-based business, and it just didn't work out here. But hopefully it'll work out for him somewhere else. He is an easy guy to root for.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is a tough business. Baseball can be so unforgiving. You can be a great guy. You can work really hard. It's not always going to result in good numbers there. Well, Joel, appreciate your time as always, man. Have a great Thanksgiving. I do want to give you one last opportunity to plug socials, to let everybody know when your next episode is going to be out. Because if you haven't listened to Joel yet over on KCSN, absolutely phenomenal stuff. Want to give you the floor on that.
Yeah, go follow me on Twitter at JT Penfield. Go follow KC Sports Network if you haven't already. We got all your Kansas City sports, Chiefs, Royals, KU, K-State, Mizzou, Sporting KC Current, all of it. It's a great resource. We got shows every week for pretty much every platform, except for me right now, because we're in the middle of the offseason. Nothing's really happened. But I'd imagine sometime around the winter meetings, or maybe after the winter meetings, we'll have an episode, a little mid-off-season update where we talk about some of these moves and what could go in the future, really hit the ground running again, probably in early February as pitchers and catchers report. And then after that, it'll be once a week. Season starts, it'll be 3 days a week. So for now, just keep following me on social. I'll talk about the Royals and, whatever else comes to mind, I guess, during the offseason.
All right.
Oklahoma State football, probably. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, all things too. It's not just Royal stuff from Joel. He's very well versed when it comes to the sports world. But very excited to have you on today. Definitely want to do it moving forward. I know we got the holidays coming up here, but again, you heard all that from Joel. Hope you guys love this episode. That'll do it for another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. And thank you for making Locked On your first listen every day. For your second listen, find the all-night Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night until a World Series champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale and find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Tomorrow, we're going to have a pair of more interviews coming your way. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.